Hey guys, welcome back to The Vegan View. So obviously the holidays can be really wonderful, but they can also be a little bit awkward sometimes, especially if you are the vegan in the room and you're with non-vegan friends and family. Sometimes they make little comments or not little comments, and it can be very uncomfortable. So today we're going to talk about how we deal with that and maybe some strategies and tips to make the holidays a little bit more enjoyable for you and your family.
So I know something that's really hard around Thanksgiving is that there is a lot of food and a lot of animal-based food, and it's really horrific after, especially if you've first gone vegan and you've first seen all these horrible things happening to animals, and then you see them there on the plate. And I know that is something that makes me uncomfortable, makes everyone uncomfortable, but I know from my experience as someone who used to eat meat, it would also make me uncomfortable to have a vegan there and have them make comments where there's a day it's already so stressful with the cooking and like some people watch football and some people see relatives they haven't seen in years. So it is a lot of stress, and I feel personally, I feel like it's not the day that you break out your animal activism card.
Because it's like literally generally a whole bird, and there's this whole ceremony with like cutting it and carving it, and it's just so, it's hard to ignore. Like certain meals, I feel like throughout the year it's a little easier to disconnect, but at Thanksgiving and the holidays it's usually a big, just right in the center, and
so in your face,
can make people really uncomfortable, especially new vegans. I've heard that a lot in the comments.
Yeah, I think especially when I first went vegan, it was like very triggering. You eat with non-vegans probably pretty frequently, but to see it in such like it's like
non-disguised
form. Non-disguised.
And that's a good way of saying it.
And just like, I just remember like people talking about it just so nonchalantly, and me being like, what are you talking?
Give me the leg meat.
And you're like,
the leg meat?
Yeah.
Like, what? How do you not think that's a weird thing to say?
I know,
but I
like,
never did.
Leg or breast, and you're like, I'm so uncomfortable.
And then like stuffing it and like all that stuff is just like, ugh, like it's all so weird once you become vegan. But I think that's a great point that like it's not the best time. It's already a sensitive holiday for a lot of people for a lot of reasons.
So we have an episode on like how to be at Thanksgiving with non-vegans. We'll link down below. But that food you bring, always bring extra, always bring stuff that's really good. Lots of salt, lots of fat, lots of sugar, because you're cooking for people who don't eat vegan normally. And I like to keep my food kind of off to the side so I can kind of have my own like little corner that I can go to when it's time to like make your plate.
Yes.
Or keep it on your side of the table, depending on what arrangement you have, just because when you're in the middle of everything, it feels kind of like you're in the line of fire.
Yeah.
And every time someone takes like a piece of turkey or I don't know, anything that's not vegan, it's like you're the visual cue. And then I feel like then I'm kind of putting myself in that line of fire.
So putting it over to the side and bringing extra. I like the idea of bringing extra, because every time I've been to a family holiday event and I've brought vegan food, everybody always wants to try it. So I definitely recommend, I think that's a great idea, bringing extra. For me, I think that one way that's easy to cope, or makes it easier to cope with the like triggering, the visuals that are triggering, is to focus on what you are doing and what good you're doing by keeping that off your plate. And it might seem so insignificant in comparison to everyone else that's partaking in eating meat, but you have to know that those numbers add up, and the amount of animals that you save every year by not eating them 3 times a day, which is the norm for most people, really, really makes a huge difference on the environment, on animal lives, and on your own health. And just really being proud of the steps that you're taking to do good and focusing on what is working and what is good, I think is, for me, the only way that it feels like I can be there and be calm, because it's not about other people at that point. It's me and what I'm doing, and no one else. I don't expect anyone else to be on the same journey as me in that way.
And I think one thing to remember too is that even if you feel like your friends and family members are never going to go vegan, you're still planting a seed in their minds by like eating this beautiful vegan plate in front of them. Like maybe they don't always get to see the home cooked vegan meals that you eat. So that's a great opportunity to like show them how colorful and amazing vegan meals can be. Like that's one thing that I always feel like I was kind of like, look at everybody else's plate. I'm like, like this
it's like
looks
50
good.
Shades of Beige. And
50
like
Shades of Beige. Yeah,
rainbow.
Literally, yeah. So I always have like, the greens, the mac and cheese. Like I have like the whole like
cranberry
sauce. Yeah.
We like cranberry sauce.
Yeah. But I really do think that does make a difference. Like you don't have to say anything. They see your food. They see you eating it. They see you enjoying it and living your happy life. And that is planting a seed in one way or another. Maybe changing somebody's mind about veganism. One thing that I try to do when it comes to like coping with like the being around the animal products, because for me just like smelling it is like probably the worst part. Seeing it is bad too, but just smelling it. So I always try to do as much prep work on my meals as I can ahead of time. So like first thing in the morning, I'll usually make all the sides before anybody's even in the kitchen. So that's already done, and then I can just like heat them up when it's time to eat. Yeah. And then usually we will do like a tofurkey type or Gardein type roast situation. And those usually take like
much faster,
like 20-30 minutes or something like that.
And we did a roast taste test last year. We will
link
tell
it below.
You which ones are the best, so check that one out.
Because there's a big variety of like good to like really, really good.
Yeah. So then I'll just like save that to the end, like that and like some rolls. I'll like heat up 20-30 minutes before we eat, and then that way I don't have to be in the kitchen for all of the like taking all the stuff out of the turkey and all that stuff. I'll just be like watching TV.
I love what you said about planting seeds, because I think also something that's made a big difference in my family is to show how it's not weird. Like you can be at the table, you can be part of it. It's like you don't have to give up holidays. You don't have to be awkward or uncomfortable or make other people awkward or uncomfortable. You have your food, they have theirs. You can still partake and have almost exactly the same holiday that you did before. And I think when people see that, especially people who love you and care about you, they're gonna feel like, oh, this isn't that different. That's not that weird. And then that stigma of being vegan is so hard and it's so different and it's so weird and I would be missing out. Eventually that starts to fade because they see, well, she's not missing out. Everything's the same. And I think that that's really, really powerful. That's a lot more, it has a bigger impact than I think we realize.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have an idea of what a vegan is before even like meeting a vegan. And so you have an opportunity to show people like, I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not here to shame you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to live my happy life, eat the food that makes me feel good inside and out.
And connect on so many other things that we do have in common, which kind of brings us to what people say in those comments and things like that. I think one thing that's super important is to remember that the holiday is about food, but it's not only about food. It's about family and connecting and making memories. And I think that having that perspective going into it will put you in a much more positive mindset as opposed to going into it feeling defensive and feeling angry and feeling anxious.
Going off of what you guys were saying, I think when people think you're vegan, and especially if it's your first Thanksgiving as being the vegan in the room, veganism seems like this phase, and like your grandma's probably gonna be like, oh, that's NISHA the vegan. She's just going through her phase. And I think something that is really interesting about when you go through phases, like you have a goth phase or, different phases you do, it's like you lose a piece of your identity. And I think something that's really important with making sure that everyone in the room knows that like veganism is something you believe in and not some drastic weird thing is to make sure that you're still being yourself. And if you before wouldn't make rude comments about what people were eating or try to bring up and make people feel bad at an activity where you're actually seeing people participate in something you're against, it's very shaming. And like, you weren't like that before, so why would you be like that again?
That's such a good point.
There's so much power in silence and staying true to yourself that if people are making comments, you're under no obligation to kind of like laugh them off or get mad. I think just taking it in, sitting silent, and if someone really does push your buttons, just say like, I'm not really comfortable talking about this at a certain time. If you want to go out, grab coffee and discuss it, which they don't want to. No one wants to grab coffee with you and talk about your veganism. I think that's a great way to like separate the activity, your thoughts, and still maintain like that normalcy of being yourself.
I practiced that because I remember you saying that, and I've used that in my own life, and I actually practiced that recently. I was with a group of non-vegans, and there was a conversation that came up, and actually I realized that I don't have to try to convince anyone, and like I remember you saying there's so much power in silence. You sometimes think that if you're silent that you're not doing enough, but I think a lot of times there is power in silence, because what happened was I was silent, I just ate my food. I wasn't like mute, the conversation continued. But for that portion of the conversation, they had a conversation completely without me and didn't even notice, because they weren't actually trying to learn about veganism. They weren't actually open to it. They had this preconceived idea that they wanted to kind of like bash veganism or whatever right in front of me. I realized I was like, I don't have to chime in. I don't have to defend myself. They don't even notice that I'm not saying anything. So it's like, the conversation literally happened and then went, and I felt so protected because I felt like this is so important to me. It's so special to me. And sometimes when you're in a big group setting and you only have a quick second to like give your two little sentences point of view, it kind of gets pushed aside and twisted, and all these other opinions come in, and you're like, oh, that's not how I meant to say it, and you just feel really gross after and kind of vulnerable.
Whereas there's like a proverb that says the mountain never bends to the winds, because like the mountain's made of stone, the mountain knows what it's made of, or something like that.
It has like a foundation.
But I always think of that, like, you're the mountain. Like, veganism is a very honorable, just incredibly humane way to live. I think it's one of the easiest ways to have such a concrete way of living your beliefs, of not harming and doing the best for the planet, the animals, and yourself. So you're that mountain. Don't let the winds come at you and make you bend. Like, know what you're made of. Like, you're pretty freaking powerful. And you don't have to justify that. You're the mountain.
Yeah.
I love that example that you gave, because it's almost never about you when somebody's talking about veganism. Like, you being vegan has triggered something within them, and they feel the need to defend themselves, or they feel a need to share their opinion, or like explain why they do things a certain way, and it's never really about you. It really isn't. And
especially when it's people who love you. Like, they're not even necessarily, they don't know how important it is to you, or how really sensitive it can be, and they don't know how uncomfortable they're making you, because in some ways they're talking about it almost as if it's like a philosophy or a political view or something. They don't realize how deeply personal it can be.
And I think a lot of that comes from like there's a discrepancy between vegan being a diet and vegan being a lifestyle. And I think that for so long people just associated vegans with vegetarians, paleo, keto, all of these things. They're all just these weird diets that people do.
Gluten-free.
I feel like a lot of times people just think that
they don't know what it is to you.
It's just a diet. It's not something that's super personal. And I don't know if there's anything you can say to like make them realize that. Like, I try to say that to people, like, oh, it's not just a diet, it actually is a lifestyle.
I'm sure there are people watching who are thinking that that's a very passive way about it, and that they want to be saying something, and that this is an opportunity to speak in front of a group of people, and to really show the difference, and to that's like a perfect opportunity for activism. And I think if you feel comfortable and you feel like you wouldn't be making other people uncomfortable, then it's fine to have those kinds of conversations. And maybe if it's like, how at holidays there's lots of like little smaller parties going on, like on the couch over here and in the kitchen at the counter over there, maybe if it's a smaller group and someone really does want to have a conversation, it can be a great opportunity.
I think we're all speaking from experience when we say this approach, because we've had multiple Thanksgivings where we've been vegan, and we've tried multiple different approaches, and it seems to be that the best way is to just kind of lead by example.
And I found, especially if I say something before a meal about being vegan, then that person's super uncomfortable about not eating vegan for the rest of the meal. And then I know that they're kind of like really self-conscious of me being in the room. And then I'm like, they're having a very negative association with me. And I'm probably like, especially with Thanksgiving, I'm probably seeing you like once this year, or once or twice. And this is like our one time to catch up. And I'm going to tell you about how you're a bad person for eating animals. Like, no thanks.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, too, because I think people think they have to, like, apologize for the food that they're eating, especially on a holiday when it's, like, people get so excited about food. That's just so much guilt and shame, and they're associating those feelings with you and with veganism. So I think that that's actually having, like, a negative effect on the movement. food-wise, I think we said it's really important to bring a dish. I think it's also really important to bring, like if you can, to bring desserts, because that's the part that gets really overlooked.
I was going to say that.
And at this point, there will already be a video up with some really easy to find frozen vegan pies. You can get all kinds of regular grocery stores. So make sure you bring at least one dessert, because that's something I find they're always like,
is there a dessert that you like to bring that you can give a recipe for?
Pie for sure. I'll link some of my favorite desserts. I have these brownie cheesecake bites. It's like pumpkin cheesecake on top and brownie on the bottom, and they're so good, and they're really easy to make.
Oh, sounds so good.
I remember you made those last year, and I really wanted one.
I love those.
Bring them for us.
Okay.
And then I really like Chloe Coscarelli. She has this vegan desserts cookbook, and she has
It's such a good cookbook.
Yeah, it's a really good. The vegan desserts one's amazing, but she has this shortbread, pecan shortbread, like with a glaze on top that's kind of like pecan pie. Pecan. How do you say it?
I say pecan.
Okay.
I say pecan.
Oh, we're all
A
from
lot
the
of people
South.
say pecan.
Pecan.
They have this shortbread that's kind of like a pecan pie that's really good. And then I have a chocolate pumpkin spice cake on my channel that you can watch.
That sounds so good.
Yeah.
I would just do a store-bought pie.
Yeah.
I'm lazy.
Yeah.
But I also really like chocolate chip cookies. I feel like that's a fun, cozy thing to like bring, put in the oven, and then
That's what
everyone
I wanna
smells
eat.
it, and they're like, ooh, what's that?
Everybody loves a chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah.
Have you tried the Ovenly recipe?
No.
I'll put a recipe for you down below, but it's like a chocolate chip cookie making strategy that is such a game changer, so I'll put that below.
All right, we have a lot of Thanksgiving videos and content and stuff for the holidays, so we'll link all of those down below. Check it out. Hopefully it'll help you out before you go to your Thanksgiving dinner. And
Have fun. Happy holidays. We hope that you guys enjoy Thanksgiving this year, and we will see you guys in a video very soon.